Good afternoon and good morning to some of you. We want to welcome you to the applicants webinar for the Conservation Innovation Grants for on-farm trials. I'm your facilitator for the day, Yamika Bennett, Acting Projects Branch Chief here at headquarters. And for a little housekeeping for the meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be available for those with Teams access just a few minutes after the session ends. However, there may be an extended period of time before we're able to place the recording on the program website. Attendees in this meeting will have their mics muted during the session, but feel free to submit any written questions using the Q&A button at the top of the screen at any time during the meeting. And we will respond to as many as possible at the end of the session. We'll also compile the questions and answers and place those on the SIG website and to grants.gov as soon as possible. There could be delays depending on the questions and if other agency POCs are required to respond. So now we will have welcoming remarks from the Financial Assistance Program Director, Mr. Jerry Rayner. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Glad to see you're able to join us this afternoon in reference to the webinar for Conservation Innovative Grant. It has taken some time for us to get to this point of having this announcement. So we're looking forward to getting your proposals. The team will be sharing with you information about the announcement, things that have changed within the scope of the notice of funding, and then we'll be able to address any questions that you may have. Just as we did previously, we'll still be able to gather those questions relative to the notice of funding opportunity. There are going to be some that the agency, NRCS, will be able to answer, as well as the Grants and Agreements Division, who will have the opportunity to provide some responses to questions related to that notice of funding as well. So let's take the opportunity to just kind of dive into the information, and then scheduling these. We know you've had some time to kind of look at the notice of funding. I know you probably already have particular questions in mind. So let's go ahead and start loading those questions and sharing those so we can provide those appropriate responses. And as Yamika said, once the webinar is finished, getting that posted, getting answers and things getting responses to your questions may take us some time, but we'll diligently be working toward that. And again, any of the contact information within the notice of funding, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll see if we can address your questions. Do not want any delays. I know this announcement period and the proposal opening period may be a little shorter than we have had in the past, but we are operating on some tighter deadlines than we have before. So looking forward to the meeting this afternoon, and looking forward to being able to address your questions. Yamika, I'll turn it back over to you so we can dive right in. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And just another bit of housekeeping before we get going. If you have any questions, please enter those in the Q&A section above and not the chat. That way we can compile those and glean from that to create our FAQ document. So please, again, use the Q&A section at the top of your screen and not the chat. All right. So we want to recognize the group who helped to plan this event and to help get everything going for this session. So first starting out is our Deputy Chief of Programs, Ms. Astrid Martinez. And you all just heard from our Division Director, Mr. Jerry Rayner, and myself, the Acting Projects Branch Chief. But want to give a special shout out to the grants team, Ms. Caroline Sharoni, Leah Hermans, who you'll be hearing from for the rest of the session, Angela Sherman, Kip Cherry, or Phil Kip Cherry, and from our grants and agreements division, we have Jeffrey Jacobs and Jennifer Sweeney, and they'll be with us to answer those grants.gov related questions. So next up, we will have Leah Hermans. Thank you.
Thanks, Yamika. Let me just get my settings all together here. As Yamika said, my name is Leah Hermans. I am the manager of the On-Farm Trials program. So today we're going to start with some application essentials, and then I'll go over the program basics. We'll definitely save plenty of time at the end for a Q&A. So as mentioned, feel free to get your questions answered. Any questions that we don't have time for today, or other questions that we also have coming into the SIG inbox, we're going to put together in a FAQ document that will be posted to the website. Hopefully that will get posted within the next week or so. And just before I dive into things, I want to say thank you for your interest and for taking your time today to learn more about the program and the application process. I always say the strength and quality of the program is really based on the strength and quality of the proposals that come in. So we're just grateful for your time today and for your interest. All right, so we'll get started with the application essentials and what you'll need to know in order to get started. The first place to start for anyone interested in the program is to read the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And this can be found on grants.gov using just a simple search or by looking up the long opportunity listing number here on the screen. That Notice of Funding Opportunity really has all the key information that you're going to need to know on what we're looking to fund and what the rules of the game are and what you'll need to apply. So if you haven't already read through the Notice of Funding Opportunity, I highly encourage you to start there before taking any other steps. That document will outline that all applications are going to be submitted through grants.gov, and it has what you'll need to actually submit the application. If you have questions about the submission process, or if you have any technical issues with grants.gov, please contact the grants.gov applicant support, which is on grants.gov. That is your best first line of defense for any questions that are really related to the submission itself. Let's see, and it's worth calling out that you'll need to be registered in sam.gov before submitting the application and provide a UEI, a unique entity identifier, in the application. And SAM registration can take several weeks. So that is another thing to do right away. That's kind of one of the first steps that you'll want to do because it is absolutely time sensitive. And I'll just repeat that we are only accepting proposals through grants.gov. Without that UEI number, you will not be able to hit submit. The proposals are due July 27th, which I believe is a Monday. We just always encourage folks to submit those packages at least 1 or 2 business days prior to the close date. We would hate to miss out on your proposal due to a submission issue or some technicality. So please submit it a couple days early just to give yourself time to work out any roadblocks you may encounter. All right, now I'll move on to give some background on the program. On-Farm Trials was first authorized in the 2018 Farm Bill. It's a component of the Conservation Innovation Grants, which is itself part of the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, known as EQIP. The OFT, the On-Farm Trials competition, includes the Soil Health Demo Trial Priority, which is a subcomponent for projects that strictly relate to the implementation of soil health practices and systems. Our soil health demo projects require some unique responsibilities on the part of the grantee, and I'll get into those details later in this presentation. Okay, so Conservation Innovation Grants has two components. One is on-farm trials, which we're talking about today, and the other is SIG Classic. I think it's helpful upfront just to make a distinction between the two programs. SIG Classic was the SIG program as it existed since 2004. SIG Classic, one of the reasons it's also helpful to make this distinction is because SIG Classic is open now. And my colleague Caroline Chironi is going to be presenting a similar webinar to applicants for the SIG Classic program tomorrow. So if you hear this elevator pitch of SIG Classic as it is different from on-farm trials and think your proposal might be better suited for that program, I encourage you to attend that webinar tomorrow to learn more about that program and see which one might be a better fit for your proposal. The SIG Classic NFO can also be found on grants.gov. And like I said, that webinar information is going to be in the notice of funding opportunity there. So kind of high level elevator pitch again, the SIG Classic funds the development and piloting of new approaches and technologies. So the key here is it's more for early stage exploration of innovative practices. So in cases where more field tests should be done before a practice is scaled up, SIG Classic will be a better fit. On-farm trials funds the adoption and evaluation of innovative technologies that have a known benefit and are well positioned to be scaled up. So the focus here is really on adoption and getting these practices out into the fields of producers and getting an evaluation of the on-farm implementation and impacts. OFT also has some more clear structural components that the projects need to have, the big one being that awardees have to make incentive payments to participating producers, and the project work needs to take place on the land of EQIP eligible producers. I'll take a deep dive into that as part of this webinar, but just kind of, like I said, higher level, question to ask yourself is the practice or approach positioned to be scaled up and adopted by producers? If the answer is yes, you're in the right place. On-farm trials is likely going to be a better fit. But that's really for folks that are ready to get this in the field of producers and demonstrate the benefits. But if the answer instead is that the project includes some developmental work or initial testing, then SIG Classic might be a better fit. Oh, apologize, my mouse is just jumping ahead of me right now. All right, so let's see, we're talking about funding here. So this year we have $50 million available for on-farm trials. Matching funds are not required for the program. We have a minimum award size of $5 million and $250,000 is, maximum award size of $5 million. Very clear thing that I need to clarify there, $5 million maximum, and $250,000 is the minimum award size. Projects can last from 3 to 5 years in duration. So each year we set out priorities for our competition. Here are the 4 priorities that we have for this year: irrigation management, grazing lands, nutrient management, and the soil health demonstration trials. These 4 priorities have broadly remained the same from last year. However, there have been some small changes made within each priority. And a big thing to call out here is that, so each proposal must address at least one priority. There are some proposals that may have benefits that span multiple priorities, but each applicant must choose one single priority under which their proposal will compete. And that is going to dictate which panel of experts will be reviewing their priority, whether their background is grazing lands or nutrient management, irrigation management, or soil health. Okay, let's see. I think I skipped ahead. There we go. I want to just take a minute to talk more about the soil health demo priority specifically, because as I mentioned before, there are some unique things that are specific to this priority. The goal of the priority is to support more widespread adoption of soil health management systems and practices. The biggest extra piece here is related to evaluation protocol. So we work with our awardees to use consistent evaluation protocols and methods for assessing soil health outcomes. There's just a robust evaluation piece standardized for soil health demo trials. Our other priorities have an evaluation requirement, but it's just not as prescriptive as the soil health demo trials. You can find more information about what's going to be required here on the SIG website. We have a page for applicants, and on that applicant page, there is a section for more information for the SIG on-farm trials soil health demo applicants. If you look under there, you can see all the specifics of what would be required for a soil health demo awardee. And just the last thing I want to note before moving on is that the soil health demo priority has a requirement that producers who participate will need to consent to using NRCS using data for a congressionally mandated report. All right, on-farm trials, how it works. Here, we're really get into the nuts and bolts of the program and how the project should be structured. So there are three big pieces to any on-farm trials project. The first is that incentive payments need to be made to producers to support the implementation of innovative conservation practices. We expect the financial assistance in the form of an incentive payment will come from the grantee to the participating producer. So NRCS does not facilitate those payments. The second big piece is that grantees provide technical assistance to the producers to assist with implementing the practice. And the third is that there's an evaluation component where grantees will assess the natural resource and economic outcomes of the on-farm trials. So applicants really need to have the capacity to facilitate all three of these pieces. Sometimes applicants will partner with, they will bring in partners to help complete one or more of these pieces, but the main grantee or the lead applicant is the one who needs to coordinate all of the pieces. And it's worth noting here that the statute allows NRCS to implement on-farm trials in one of two ways, either ourselves or through eligible entities, through our grantees. We are going with the latter this year, as we have in previous years. We're really looking for partners who can help the agency identify the most promising innovative technologies and approaches. And we're looking for awardees or grantees that have access to producer networks, and they can find participating producers, they can handle the technical assistance, they can facilitate the payments, and get these activities on the ground, and then help evaluate to demonstrate how successful the conservation outcomes were. So events in a typical project. This is going to be just a flyover of the typical events that all on-farm trials projects are going to have, because like I mentioned at the beginning, there's more structure to an on-farm trials project. And so these are events that all projects will follow in the project lifespan. So first we have, proposals due July 27th, and we expect to make the award announcement in September. And then once we make that announcement, my team and our grants agreements team will get working on agreements. And our estimate right now is that projects will begin at the end of the calendar year. And then the first real action of any project is the producer recruitment. So the grantees identify producers. And first, this is a frequently asked question we get is, do they have to be identified prior to the application submission? Some grantees already have the producer selected. There are cases where people have them identified up front. I'd say the majority do not. So the first step for most projects is to have those producers identified or do the producer recruitment. And I'd just also like to call out here that producers needs to be plural. Single site demonstration projects are not eligible for on-farm trials. I think the smallest cohort of producers we've had for any given project was 5, but we've had projects that have recruited up to hundreds of producers. And so the number of producers is really going to relate to the expense and technical difficulty of the conservation practice you're implementing, but kind of in general, the more the better, because we are looking for a robust evaluation. And so the more we're able to get, the better statistical significance we're going to have. All right, so let's see, once the agreements are finalized and the producers are selected and identified, the awardee will work with NRCS to confirm producer eligibility and also complete the environmental evaluations for their project sites. I'm going to talk about the specifics of producer eligibility in just a minute, but just want to call this step out here because the environmental evaluations can take several weeks to, sometimes several months in complicated situations to complete. And so please just account for this in your project timeline when you're setting up milestones and expectations for your project. All right, so that's kind of the work that needs to get done to prepare for the ground disturbing activities. And here's where the fun begins. So after we have those environmental evaluations and producer eligibility checks complete, then the grantees can make those incentive payments to producers. They can provide the technical assistance and actually get this is where the meat of the project takes place, and you get the trials on the ground up and running. And so over time, they evaluate the conservation benefits or effects of the trial. And, in addition to the evaluation component, throughout their project, awardees will submit semi-annual reports, annual financial reports, and ultimately a final project report. Okay, so let's talk about eligible entities. These are eligible applicants or eligible awardees. There are three broad categories of eligible entities outlined in the statute. The first one is private entities whose primary business is related to agriculture. The second is nonprofits with experience working with agricultural producers. And the third is non-federal government agencies. So, for example, public universities would fall under non-federal government agencies. Private universities can apply as nonprofits with experience working with ag producers, and small or large businesses would fit as private entities if their primary business is related to agriculture. I want to specifically call out that individuals are not eligible applicants for on-farm trials as per the statute, so individuals cannot apply. All right, next I'm going to talk about producer eligibility. And I just want to make it crystal clear here that when I talk about producer eligibility, I'm talking about producers who are participating in a project. So these are not the awardees themselves, but the producers that an awardee would enroll to participate in the project and implement the trials on their land. So talking about producers who are participating in a project, there are a few requirements for participating in on-farm trials and receiving an incentive. The first is that they must be EQIP eligible, including they must be in compliance with the highly erodible land and wetland conservation provisions. In addition, they must meet the adjusted gross income requirement of the Farm Bill. The standard AGI limit is $900,000 for individuals or entities whose 3-year average AGI. So if you exceed this threshold, you're generally ineligible. So for participants. So please keep this in mind when you're planning a project and thinking about who you can recruit. AGI waivers can be requested, but that is for land of special environmental significance. So they'll be granted if NRCS determines that conservation activity that's in question would take place on land of special environmental significance, and that the activities would address the issues that classified the land as being of special environmental significance. And so awardees, like I mentioned, will work with NRCS staff to ensure that all producers receiving incentive payments through the on-farm trials program will meet these eligibility requirements before the awardees can make payments to the producers. And I guess the last thing to note here is that the incentive payments received from an on-farm trials grant do not count towards a producer's EQIP payment limitation. All right, so here I want to just outline in broad strokes what is expected in terms of NRCS involvement in a project. As I mentioned, NRCS staff will help to complete the environmental evaluations and the producer eligibility checks. They'll work with the awardees to complete these two items. And then we also assign a technical contact to each project. This is not to provide technical assistance to the participating producers, but it is for general technical oversight of the project itself. And some just additional key points here. One is that no on-farm trials funding can be used to pay for partner administrative costs. So indirect costs cannot be included in the budget. This is a statutory limitation. So indirect costs are not allowed in the budget, but direct expenses, filling out reports, personnel time, the direct expenses would be allowable cost. All right. And one last thing to note here before we get to the Q&A session is a change from last year's notice of funding opportunity. Drones are not an allowable cost this year. This includes the purchase of drones or the purchase of a service that drones used. The agency is working to meet reporting requirements for Executive Memo M2602 and will not allow for commercial unmanned aircraft systems to be included in the project budgets for this year's competition. Oh, and with that, we can move to the question and answer portion of the webinar. Again, feel free to get your questions in the chat box. We'll try to answer as many as we can today, but for any of the questions that don't get answered, we will add them to our frequently asked questions document, which is posted to our website. You're also welcome to send your questions to our inbox, which is up here, nrcscig@usda.gov. One caveat that I'll call out from the beginning here is this is a grant program that's competitive in nature. So we are not able to advise applicants on putting together their proposal. We're not able to comment on the merit of a given proposal or idea. We can't provide any advice that's specific to a project. We can only answer clarifying questions from the information provided in the NFO. So if you have clarifying questions about the program or the NFO, we'd be happy to take them now. And my colleague Caroline Chironi is going to help me in facilitating the Q&A.
Okay, just as a reminder, put your question in the Q&A section, not in the chat section. Okay. I'm going to start with the most recent question first, just because a lot of questions came in before you finished, and I think you might have answered those. So, so I'm going to just make a mark here of the two questions that I'm starting with. Okay, and then I'll go back. So I'll go from most recent to least recent. The NOFO says all soil health demonstration proposals should include baseline data controls and standard assessment methods, including information about the farm, geographic identification of each sample site. Does this mean that for soil health demonstration projects, we need to identify producers in the application, unlike other priorities?
Great question. And the answer to that is no. The soil health demo trial priority is similar to the other priorities in that producers can be identified after the project is selected. So you would begin with collecting that producer information and baseline soil health data after the project has been fully awarded. It's perfectly fine to have them identified ahead of time, but it's by no means a requirement.
Can you talk more about the distinction between classic and on-farm trials? For example, how you define quote unquote ready to be scaled up and a good fit for on-farm?
Yeah, it's so specific to each conservation approach, but really we don't want to be putting things in the fields of trials of producers and scaling them up if we're not sure that we're going to be providing them a benefit. There's some, we might not know the extent of the kind of economic benefit, or there's always going to be a transition from having things on the fields of universities to getting things in producers' fields, and part of that is a learning process. But we really want to be working with technologies that are producer ready, so things that have some testing behind them that are fully developed. Caroline, feel free to add anything to that in terms of what you think might differentiate a project between SIG Classic and on-farm trials. But on-farm trials, the key is the crux of the program is getting things out into the field, and we don't want to be setting the producers up for failure. We're trying to give them practices that have a known conservation benefit, just for whatever reason haven't been widely adopted.
Right. So SIG Classic, there's still some questions, so it's not going to be widely used with farmers yet. I think you did a good job there, Leah. So the next question, give us a link for tomorrow's Classic webinar. I responded to the individual in the chat. Are innovative plant propagation strategies to improve ecosystem biodiversity? I think we'll skip that question because that really gets into if this idea fits, and that really has to be decided by the panel. Is there a set amount for farmer incentive payments, or is that up to the applicant?
Oh, that's an excellent question. We get that one every year, so it'll definitely be in our FAQ document. There is not a set expectation. There is not a set amount because it's going to vary so greatly based on the project and what you're trying to accomplish, how you set up the incentives, how much incentives are needed, really. Some projects are going to be, if you look at budgets, sometimes we see budgets that are heavier in supplies or equipment, or sometimes the evaluation is more complex, and so we have more personnel cost tied in with the evaluation component. So the short answer is no. There's not an expected percentage that we would see, or there's not like a set range that we would see across all projects.
Is there a questionnaire for making sure a producer is EQIP eligible?
There's not a questionnaire per se, but the eligibility requirements are outlined in the NFO. So let me just see if I can pull those back up and get them on the screen here quickly. Okay, it looks like I have them in my notes. Sorry about that, but they are outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. It is the EQIP eligibility requirements. So the highly erodible lands, wetland conservation provisions, adjusted gross income. I apologize, I didn't have those in the slides, but we definitely have those outlined in the NFO, and we can get those spelled out crystal clear in the FAQ document.
I would be interested in tapping this funding for urban lands, specifically for soil health. Is there a funding mechanism for that?
There's absolutely nothing that prohibits urban lands from applying. So urban lands are, as long as you're working with EQIP eligible producers and fit into the priority descriptions, one of their priorities, you are welcome to apply to this program.
Okay, our business provides services for advancing nature-based solutions broadly. We've done several projects with agroforestry, agriculture, and have relationships with eligible producers. Is our organization eligible for SIG on-farm trials?
So it's did I get that right? It's a private entity.
It's a business that provides services for nature-based solutions broadly. And they have done projects around, they use the word around, agroforestry / agriculture. And they have relations. So yeah, it's hard to, I'm sorry. I'm not sure. You want me to read it one more time, Leah?
No, I think I get it.
Okay.
The statute describes a private entity whose primary business is related to agriculture. So what we're really looking for is capacity there, that you have those producer networks, that you have the capability of providing technical assistance. So I'd say, I don't know if there's a line that can be drawn, but if this entity in question has the producer networks, which it sounds like they do, and has or can quickly partner with somebody to provide the full technical assistance, then they would be eligible.
Would a resource conservation district qualify as nonprofit or government agency?
Uh,
I think that's like a tax, isn't that like a tax question? Jennifer, you might be able to answer that. That would be how
I think
they
it's
would be
probably a
registered.
government entity.
yeah. We have had research conservation districts apply. We have several successful awardees from research conservation districts. So I know they are eligible applicants.
The NOFO says 0 indirect. So it's for the entire project or just for the producer's financial assistance. So it's for the entire project. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it would be for the project budget. So you cannot, the applicant cannot include indirect cost within their budget. It's not just indirect cost, if you take out the producer incentives, it would be on anything.
Okay. If the proposed project involves a new technology and there's a component testing the technology in a test field before the on-farm trials is permitted in the proposal. So do the trials have to be strictly in participating producer farms?
Yeah, I don't want to get into a scenario where, oops, sorry, I'm turning my camera off, where we comment too much on a given proposal, but in that broad scenario where there needs to be some testing done, I would say the project is not going to be applicable. It's not going to be appropriate for on-farm trials. The only cases in which we allow work to be done that's not on producer's land is if for some reason it was required for technical assistance. If there was, we can allow, part of it is providing technical assistance. So if there was some demonstration needed as part of that, but if it's a trial prior to implementing the on-farm trials, I would say no. I would say it's not going to be an appropriate project. That if we're still trying things out, then that puts it more either appropriate for SIG Classic or for other funding mechanisms.
When you say you need more than one producer, does that mean just more than one field? For example, if I'm working with a dairy that works 10 different fields, would those fields qualify as different sites, or does that still count just as one producer?
That counts as one producer. We need multiple EQIP eligible producers. It's perfectly fine if each producer has multiple fields. You can describe that as part of the proposal, but to qualify for on-farm trials, you need more than one EQIP eligible producer.
I think this question's too general. I'm going to skip it. These are both, this is basically on the level of evaluation that we want. So I'll read them both, but I think they're hard to answer. Speaking of statistical significance, what level of replication and control treatment do reviewers expect? Is a multi-farm demonstration with practical side-by-side comparisons preferred over more academic replicated plot design? And then this other person asks, what types of data collection, monitoring, and reporting are generally expected of participating producers and project leaders throughout the grant period? So
let me start with that first one, because I think
Yep.
I'll take it in manageable chunks. So there's not like a template for what is expected. I think we're looking for a robust evaluation, and we're looking to our applicants to propose a robust evaluation. There's, like I said, there's not like a one size fits all like this. It really, I've seen different evaluation approaches make sense in different regions with different cropping scenarios. So there's not like a, like I said, a one size fits all, or there's not like a desired template for how the evaluation needs to be conducted. And Caroline, can you ask that second question again, please?
Yeah, I think you answered it actually. What
Okay.
types of data collection, monitoring, and reporting are expected?
Yeah,
It said specifically though of participating producers and project leaders. So, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the only priority that has a set requirement for that is the soil health demo priority. And if you go to the SIG website and click on the SIG applicants page, that will take you, there's a section there for soil health demonstration awardees, and you can open that up and see the full data set requirement. That's the one that's prescriptive, that has set data that is required for the reporting of that project, for those projects.
So projects that combine multiple conservation outcomes, such as grazing management, pollinator habitat, and soil health, are they viewed favorably, or is NRCS primarily seeking projects focused on a single priority area?
Sorry, you're cutting out there. I think I'm testing my bandwidth here. Do you mind just repeating that?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. Yep. Are projects that combine multiple conservation outcomes, such as grazing management, pollinator habitat, and soil health, are they viewed favorably, or is NRCS primarily seeking projects focused on a single priority area?
Oh, got it. Okay, excellent question. They are not viewed any more or less favorably than a project that competes under one area. At the end of the day, all projects are going to have to select one area under which to be competed. We understand that some of these projects are going to have multiple kind of co-benefits outside of that priority. But no, there's not like additional points or additional favorability for somebody who can span across multiple priority areas.
Is multi-state a must for the $5 million cap, or can this still be within one state?
Very good question. I have seen large projects within one state, so there's not like a hard and fast requirement for that. If you're going to have a $5 million project, we would want to see like robust coverage, but we have very large states. We have areas that span a lot, so it's there's not a hard and fast requirement that you have to have more than one state if you're requesting a certain amount.
Can on-farm trials be a mix of commodity and specialty crops?
Yes.
Okay, this is a good one. You might have answered this already, but is there a recommended percentage of the total SIG project budget that should be allocated to incentive payments? Or may the amount be determined by the number of participating producers and their level of involvement?
Yeah, we want incentive payments to make sense in terms of, there are some practices that are going to require a higher risk, for example, and so they might need higher incentives to capture that. There are some projects in which awardees will give the producers some supplies or maybe even some equipment directly, and therefore the incentive payment itself might look smaller, but there's not a required amount, and there's like we need the incentive structure to be logical and reasonable for the project proposed, and so there's just absolutely not like a tailored approach to that or a given range that I can recommend, because it varies widely. And two great projects can have very different percentages put towards incentive payments.
Are there preferred scientific teams to serve as collaborators on SIG proposals?
No, we don't. I mean, we want folks with technical expertise. So, but there's not like a group that I could point to and say that, you have to have a university or you have to have, something specific on as a partner on your project. We're just looking for like robust capacity, and that can look different depending on the applicant and the partners available.
The NOFO says to plan for start dates in September 2026, and in another place it says the intent is to execute awards during the fourth quarter of the calendar year in 2026. Should we plan for September 2026 or January 1st, 2027 start date?
Thank you for the clarifying question. I would estimate that it's likely to be later in the calendar year as opposed to September. Once we make the awards, the amount of time that it takes to execute a given agreement can vary. So it's possible some agreements will be executed sooner and others might be, closer to October, others might be closer to December. These are all estimates at the end of the day. So just prepare for some flexibility. And like I said, know that once the project starts, there will need to be a period for producer recruitment, usually, unless you have those producers identified. And there will absolutely need to be a period for the producer eligibility checks and environmental evaluations. So the one thing I would just recommend is do not plan on, hitting the ground running in September, because that's going to set your project off track from the beginning, because there are those required steps no matter what. But like I said, these are estimates, but I would estimate that it's going to be later in the calendar year.
Okay, can ARS scientists serve as collaborators on the SIG proposal? And if not, how can we partner with ARS scientists?
A good question. Yeah, federal entities can serve as partners. They can't be the primary applicant. An important consideration here is they can't be on the budget. So we can't pay for, the funds of the federal entity, but we welcome other federal agencies to partner. It's just that they can't be the primary applicant, and they can't have funding in the budget going to them. Caroline, feel free to provide any clarifying information on that.
I'll add as well, they can't give their resources to it, but that's in the case of match, so that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I always
no
run that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, you went over that. Is there anticipation that this program will be available in the future?
Yes. We anticipate holding the competitions annually. And the priorities, for the most part, for on-farm trials are, they changed slightly, but they are driven by the statutory language. So I would expect the broad category of priorities is likely to remain. like our soil health demo trials, irrigation management, nutrient management really come from the statutory language. So I anticipate this program will continue, and that our priorities that are connected to the statute will also remain.
If we want to test the efficacy and soil health impacts of adding an amendment, can we partner with a company that produces the amendment? And if yes, how do we add this company to the proposal?
Yes, you can. And how you add it to the proposal, I would say, is up to you. I'm not sure if the question is in terms of confirming their participation or adding them into the budget. But our within the proposal, there's multiple sections that you would discuss partnerships. I can't remember the names of the sections, but I think it's one of them is like contributor. One of them is personnel, or I apologize, I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's a section that talks about like your capacity, and that's where you would list your own staff and also partners. Within the budget, you would be talking about if you have a subaward or a contractual agreement, most partners end up being subawards. You would break down how they would be contributing and what funds would go to them. So you are welcome to partner with a private entity, and it would be reflected in the proposal, as requested in the various sections.
Would the purchase of drone equipment be allowed within the grant to reduce soil compaction from farm equipment passes on the land?
No, if I'm understanding that correctly, because of this year's prohibition against drone equipment. Caroline, did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, like you can't purchase drone equipment, and you can't purchase drone services with the federal budget. Yeah. Let's see. Will local NRCS offices help with the farmer AGI verification or other steps before processing farmer payments?
Sometimes the task of doing the producer eligibility checks is given to our state offices. Some states choose to recruit folks from the local field offices to help with it. Other states have, one or two people doing it at the state level that do all of it. To give you just kind of a snapshot of what it looks like, our awardees do the recruitment, and then once they've confirmed which producers they want to participate, they ensure those producers are registered with FSA. So some producers are already registered, and if not, they have them go to their local FSA office to register. And then once they're registered, the awardee would give the state NRCS contact a list of names of folks who plan on participating and are registered with FSA. And then the state folks do just a back-end check to confirm that they are indeed eligible. They give the awardee the green light, and the awardee can move forward. So like I said, each state does that a little bit differently. It might be sourced out to kind of local staff to assist with, or it might be done at the state level.
So this question is for Jennifer. Does the SIG on-farm program allow for advance payments to grant recipients?
Okay, so first of all, Caroline, can you hear me okay? Because I'm in a thunderstorm.
Oh, yes, I can. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
but this
that's
stuff
okay.
changes so often. I thought you'd be the best one to answer it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So under the new December 2025 general terms and conditions that is USDA wide, recipients can receive an advance payment, but they need to have it liquidated or have spent the money. They need to have spent the money within 3 days of receiving the advance. So if a recipient needed an advance for something in a couple of weeks from now, and they could show that they had spent the money and they needed to pay the bill in advance of something, we could work through that. But the days of months long, like 90-day advances, are no longer, that no longer applies. They need to have spent the money in 3 days of receiving it. So there's the short answer.
Thank you. So it's probably worth answering this question again, Leah. Are producer incentive rates based on existing practice payment scenarios, or does the awarded partner have the ability to design a novel incentive rate structure?
Yeah, it's a good question that's worth repeating, especially with these additional details. So I like the framing of that question because I think it leads to a good answer, which is, so the short answer is no, they don't have to be based on existing payment schedules, but you're absolutely welcome to use existing payment schedule as a starting point or as a frame of reference. So I think that's a great place to be aware of what the existing payment schedules are. But there's nothing that tethers the on-farm incentive payments to be exactly what existing payment schedules are. So this is where we offer our applicants and awardees some flexibility to propose what they think is reasonable with a justification for it.
Do nurseries qualify as farms?
I think if they have an FSA farm and track number, I think that they would.
Thanks,
Oh,
Jennifer.
thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
We haven't worked with nurseries
Okay.
before, but I couldn't think of
Yeah.
anything that would prohibit them. So yes, that's an excellent question. It sounds like the answer is they can if they are registered with FSA.
Are we able to partner with state agencies and include them in the budget, unlike federal government agencies?
Yes, there is nothing that would prohibit state non-federal government agency from partnering on an award.
While the prime award cannot charge F&A or indirect costs, are the subawardees allowed to charge an indirect cost rate?
Correct. Yes, the prohibition to indirect cost applies to the applicant, to the primary awardee. It does not apply to subawards.
Okay, we're down to 3 minutes just to. Is there a preference for projects to be done in conjunction with an educational institution? I feel like we answered that sort of before.
In different wording, yeah. No, I don't think I think we are looking for, like I said, capacity and technical expertise. And if that is with an institution or other projects have looked very different with different partners, we're just making sure we have that capacity.
Are there examples of previously funded projects that involve grazing and pollinator habitat that we could review?
We have a project search tool on the SIG website. So if you go to the SIG website, there is a page for projects. And there you can search through all of the awarded projects using key terms or there's some filters. So I recommend anyone who's interested in this topic or others in terms of what's been funded, if you go to that SIG projects tab to explore SIG projects, there's the project search, and you can look to see what's been funded within the conservation practice or research concern that you are looking at.
Besides EQIP, are there other exclusions for any commodity locations, farming practice, or level of technological attainment that are specific exclusions? For example, Amish farms, hemp, intensive tillage.
That is a good question. Caroline, help back me up on this one. It has to be legally,
it has to be legal, right?
Yeah.
So we have done hemp before. We have done hemp before.
We have done I think there's nothing that would prohibit Amish farms.
Right. Yep. I think we've had problems where farmers, if they don't want to go to an FSA office, they basically can't be included. So there's farmers that don't want to be involved, share their information with the FSA office. But yeah, the one thing is it has to go through an environmental evaluation. So because it has to pass NEPA. So intensive tillage is probably okay, but it would definitely be looked at and scrutinized for environmental impact. So let's see. Will the webinar recording be sent to us so we can review later, just in case some people missed that early on?
It will not, no. I think Yamika mentioned in the beginning that we are going to do our best to post the recording to the website as quickly as possible. It just, sometimes takes time to get up there. But we will be able to post the frequently asked questions document. I'm hopeful that we'll do that within the next week or so.
And Leah,
Yes.
if I may add, for those with Teams access, they may be able to access the recording a few minutes after the session ends. The recording will show up in Teams. So it will all depend on your access. But as far as the website, they are correct. We have a new process for forward-facing documentation and things like that. So it just requires a longer review process for compliance. So it could be a while before the recording is made available on the website.
So we're at 4:01, 4:02.
So with that, then, since we've reached the top of the hour, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody again for your time today, for your interest in the program, for your excellent questions, and your just willingness to learn more. And we look forward to your submissions. We look forward to the review process and kicking off a new cohort of awardees. So thanks again for your time today. And any further questions that don't come out in the FAQ document, feel free to add those to the SIG inbox here, nrcssig@usda.gov, and we'll just keep updating that FAQ document as we get questions that are applicable to the greater applicant pool. So thank you again very much for your time today.